The year I started, and also going back, at a young age, 13, 14, I was doing homemade tattoos on my leg myself, and then in like, when I was 14, I had phony ID, and I went to Coney Island. Freddie at the time was tattooing in Seagate, because New York City was illegal, and I went there, and he used to make you meet on Mermaid Avenue and 16th Street. There was a phone thing there. There was like 6 phones, and you call his number, and he'd come, and he'd pick up like 6 guys and get them into the gate, and then you wait your turn to get tattooed. And at the time, I went with somebody else with me, and names were $5, and for, well, you guys call them swallows today. In Brooklyn, we used to call them bluebirds, you know, and it was either I got a bird for $10, or me and my friend got a name each, and my friend was like, oh no, I can't get tattooed, and my family will kill me. And I was like, I'm not thinking about nothing but just getting tattooed. So I got this bird from Freddie, and that was 65, 66. And then after that, I met up with Billy in the neighborhood. We more or less hung out in the corner bar, and he had some nice work from Freddie, all nice, clean. He had good skin, and Freddie did some nice stuff on him. And he had bought machines from him back in '61, like that, when it ended. And he would tattoo out of his mother's basement, which she wasn't too in love with, and that used to be a hassle. So he was like one of the original guys that toured, like, and worked. I mean, he worked like in the storeroom behind a gas station. A group of guys would say, we want to get tattooed. He'd go, oh, I can't go, my mother's giving me, you know, whatever, and I can't go to the basement. And his whole outfit consisted of like an empty 4-gallon wine box that had no flash, just plastic stencil powder, color already in bottles, needles that he had made, a power supply, and a foot switch and a clip cord. And you know, half of the times he wouldn't have Vaseline, or you know, he'd send somebody for something, and he'd tattoo wherever, this apartment, that apartment. And then I tagged along with him a few times, and I got interested in it around '68, but like I said, I didn't really do anything with it. I had down his basement one time, a good friend of mine said, put one on my leg. And I started to do a little flower, and I just was a Jonesy little like daisy type of thing. And I got like the stem and a part of the leaf done, and I was just laughing so hard that I was like, yeah, okay, let's stop right now, you know, before I really fuck this up. And so I just, you know, put it like, I never forgot about it, and I was still getting tattooed by Billy, and Freddie was bopping back around before Tony started in '70, like that. When Tony started, he was more or less the only one around, except for Billy and a couple of other people here and there that weren't that great, that was doing what he was doing. In fact, I stumbled onto him because the first guy I had put a tattoo on in '72 wound up getting a boxer boy with clouds and the word Brooklyn underneath it, and it was so neat and clean. And I was working on a furniture place on 86th Street delivering furniture because I had a wife and 2 kids to support. So, you know, I tattoo at night and whatnot. for a while, and then we went down to Tony's, me and Billy. I said to Billy, we got to go see this guy. He's doing stuff that's like, like it's all clean and like. Back then, people don't realize a lot of stuff that came out of the Coney Island era or whatever. It wasn't all neat, sweet lines like Huck and Paul were doing, and a few other people, Sailor Jerry and Bob Shore and people like that. A lot of that stuff was all blotchy and really blown out, a lot of it, because they didn't really know their machines, and they didn't know their needle. They put a needle in there and leave it in there till it became a razor that would cut you almost, That they didn't care. I mean, it's said that Max Peltz, who had that little stand on the side of Nathan's on Stillwell Avenue, that he'd take they used to call them the big tomato cans that they come in it's like not 5 gallon, but it's 5 quarts it holds. He put soapy water, Lysol, whatever in there, and water, and that would be on Memorial Day, and he wouldn't change it until Labor Day. In other words, and that's why you got the scabs you got, and the stuff healed terribly, and they didn't, needle-wise, everybody thinks that everybody used 9s and 8s and 12s and all of that. A lot of that was just 5s that they didn't solder so far down. None of us did, even when I did in the 70s or Tony. But they kept them in there so long that they kept opening up more. So that's why a lot of that old stuff, when they went around turns on a ribbon, it blotched out to be yay big. But most of that was 5s. They weren't using 7s and 8s and stuff like that. They were mainly using 5s that got spread out to be as fat as they were, and they just, didn't keep after them. They just kept doing them, you know what I'm saying? Tony, more or less, like every night, he'd make new needles for the next day. And he was very, I sat and watched him make needles, and we became friendly, and I wasn't the type of guy that was a wise ass. At that time, a lot of the Brooklyn guys were like, hey, you're going to do this for nothing, and then they had, and he didn't care for none of that, and I was more laid back. In other words, I'd sit after going to work, I'd eat dinner, and I'd run over there, and I'd sit in a chair, and he'd be tattooing over there, let's say, and I'd just sit there. And it wasn't like he'd say, see, the line goes like this, or there was no apprenticeship. You were just there to observe. You know what I'm saying? And then you went home, and what you saw, you tried to duplicate to the best of your capability. What he did do, though, was he turned me and Billy on to Spalding and Rogers, which back then, this was in '73, that I got his number, was like you had to be recommended to go there. It wasn't just a walk-in thing where he'd sell you anything. So when I called, he says, who told you to call me about supplies? And I told him, Tony Polito. He said, oh, okay, that's no problem. And he sent me, at that time, he didn't even have a catalog, not even them small ones that are collector's items now. He just had a staple thing with the flash sheets, and he'd send you photographs of like the lightweight and the Supreme. And back then, like the lightweights were $50 and the Supremes were $45 in '73. And then that summer of '73, I took my income tax money and my wife and my 2 kids, and I put them in the car and I drove up to where he was in Voorheesville on a Saturday, and I didn't give him no fair warning that I was coming. So he was like, oh, you should have told me. So that power supply that he had, which was bigger at the time, the only one he had, because he says that he didn't have any of the black wrinkled ones made, was a chrome one. And it was $15 more. So instead of being 100, it was 115. He went, if you would have told me you were coming, I went, well, I'm here now, like, hello, what am I going to do? And I swear, the 2 lightweights that he sold me, he pulled from someone else's order, not to lose the sale, because they worked so good. In other words, usually he'd give you something where you'd make a scratch. In other words, you weren't going to damage anybody the way he set them up for you. And he admitted that to Tony and whatnot. He goes, you know, you can't put something like putting a loaded gun in someone's hand that doesn't know how to use a firearm. It's the same thing. So, but the ones that I got, they put in a line, and I told Billy, and he ordered them. And the ones that he got, he was cursing me on the phone, telling me, "What'd you make me go and buy these pieces of shit for? They don't even put in a goddamn line." I go, "Come over here and see what I got, and you'll see that you tattoo with them. They work." He went, "Okay," you know, and he was handy with, you know, setting up stuff and whatnot, and he got his stuff to run right or whatever. He was used to using Jonesy machines, which I never cared for the, you know, everybody says Jonesy this, Jonesy that. I mean, I had some in my collection at one time, and then I had back in 2004, I had a burglary in my house where I lost a huge collection of like a 4 of Jonesy's, a Paul Rogers machine, Tony Pirate machines, my original lightweights I lost. I lost about 20 machines in this robbery. They took the whole safe out of the house, which is another story. But anyway, then I just continued, you know, and a couple of times, you know, guys would come to me with Tony's work on them, and I go like, "Yeah, what do you want from me?" And they go, "Well, I want to get tattooed." I went, "You got any tattoos?" And they go, "Yeah, Tony did this." And I go, "Well, why don't you go back to Tony's?" They go, "You know, why?" So then I seen Tony, and I said, "These guys came with your work." I said, and I was like, you know, he goes to me, "Do you want a tattoo, or do you just want to play with this?" And I said, "No, I want it." He goes, "Then don't worry about what I'm doing, what a guy down the block's doing. You do what you do, and you keep doing it, and you'll get better at it. And the more you tattoo, the more you'll see. Don't pay no mind to who else is out there tattooing. Do what you do." And I followed pursuit, and then a couple of times, he was always fair with me, and he made me shaders one time that like I left in the machine like for a month, like, you know, because like you couldn't do no wrong with them, you know. And then some green he turned me on to, and then one time, I mean, I've told this mostly every time I do an interview, somebody walked in there with a bird on his chest, and he went, "When did I do that bird?" And he said, "You didn't, Ronnie did it." And he said, "Oh, that's what I get for giving him green and this, that, and the other thing," you know. Them guys from that time always had to have something to say, but there was no like animosity or like keeping you down. In other words, like, just the fact that he let you hang there at that stage was more than a plus. You know what I'm saying? Then I found out about Big Joe's up in Mount Vernon, that he was selling colors and machines and whatnot also. And I went up there, and he didn't really want to sell because he's telling me you got to belong to the International Tattoo Association, which was a Terry Wrigley thing at the time. And I wrote Terry, my wife wrote Terry a letter, you know, saying that I tattooed this, that, and the other thing. Because then they were talking about scratches. In other words, anyone that didn't have a shop was a scratcher, like, you know. And then, like, we wrote this letter like, it's illegal in New York City and everybody can't work out in the open, so hello, you know. And, you know, so then I went back to Joe's and bought a machine from him, which were those aluminum ones that he was making, and they were a little different than, they didn't run as smooth as Huck's, they were more ratchety and whatnot, but they worked really well, and they really put the color in, you know. They were set up good, and then Joe was selling color also, so that was somebody else that, you know, you could buy from. And then in '74, see, Eddie called up, used to be a place on Fulton, in New York City, off of Canal Street, on Lafayette, used to be Fazan and Sparee. They were a color manufacturer. Well, one day Eddie calls up to order color from them. All the old timers had ordered color from them guys in them days. And Huck answers the phone. "Spaulding here." And Eddie goes, "Spaulding? He goes, yeah, why, who's this? He goes, it's Eddie Funk. He goes, yeah. He goes, I called for Xanaspari. He goes, yeah, well, that's me now. I'm for Xanaspari. He goes, well, let me ask you, Eddie says to him, are you going to give me, you going to take care of the guys and treat us right with the prices? Buck says, nope, price is what the price is per pound. So with that, Eddie got a hard on for what was, for him not showing him any respect, let's just say. And he turned around and fished out and got, you know, by drinking in bars and whatnot, he met a chemist and gave him some powder, and the guy analyzed it and told him what the shit was, and he started getting it together, and he got his sister into it, and the brother-in-law used to be Don used to be a motorcycle patrolman in Queens at the Highway 3, and he retired from that, and they lived out in the island, and they rented out of the house, and, you know, Eddie put them in business with that situation, national, and he went on from there. And then from there, Spalding, Huck, I don't know if he pissed off Stanley and Walter Moskowitz, and then they started selling supplies. So then, you know, they got into the picture also. And they used to have really good needles, carbon steel needles. Me and Pete used to buy them from them. They had a great blue, and they had a good yellow also that went in, you know. Back then, a lot of powders were not all grinded the right way, and they weren't fine enough where they break down when you mix them. I mean, you make your own ink. But from there, you know, then me and Pete at one point in the 80s, we met up at Joe's in 77. We became really tight. We were like brothers. And we came across, in other words, we had a color source. We had the needle, you know, either from S&W or we knew in Glendale, up the street from where Richie Fye is, there was a little store on the side that these guys sold them needles, them carbon steel needles, the tattoo ones, and they were a needle supply company that they ran. And they'd sell us that and the acetate we get from an art store or whatever. And other than design sheets, we started painting our own stuff and, you know, like this, like that, trading off stencils and whatnot. And we were more or less, you know, on our own, like, you know, we didn't need anything, you know, so we really didn't support anybody at that point.
Freddie did that?
Coney and Freddie did that. Mikey Perfetto did the flag after 9/11 on Columbus Day. Freddie did the Boxer Boy. Mikey straightened out the clouds. Dracula did the little sailor boy that's back there someplace. Mikey did the dice in between. Tony P did that. Mikey did my memory of my nephew. Tony Polito did that. Tom DeVita did this in 1976.
The Indian?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yep, that's one of the coolest straight type of designs that Tom ever did. Tony did this on me the first night I met him, and this the same night me and Billy went there. I got two of them. And Tom DeVita did this in 75. And Tony did that. Tony did the geisha. No, that one. Tony did the pinup back there. Tony did the dragon. Paul Rogers did this in Tom's River in 1979 at Ernie's shop. Ernie Carafe. He tattooed me and Pete. At the time, he said, "Oh, I ain't outlined in 10 years. Ernie will outline it and I'll color it in." And Pete said, "I don't want a tattoo that Ernie's going to outline. I want it from you, Paul." So Paul got out a pen and Pete had a little spot on his arm over here, and he drew them tattoo flowers that are usually next to a heart, you know, and some leaves. And he got his chops back and he signed it, and he says to me, "How about we put," this was a Mike Malone rose, there's a piece left off of it because it didn't, he says, "How about we put this rose in there?" Like, you know, he really got his chops back. And if you notice, It's signed 1979. Anybody else that you see with Paul Rogers' tattoo that he did an outline, they're all dated after this. So in other words, we broke the ice with Paul outlining again. Andy Capp's got one on his leg from, I think, 84. Hardy's got one from around the same time, like that. But all of them, if you look at the dates, they're all after the fact when we got them going again. Me and John Ronnie, we had taken a ride down to Jacksonville, North Carolina to sit in for Zeke. And when we got down there to work a week, Zeke went, oh, I didn't need the 2 years, I needed 1 year. We went, okay, that's cool, you know. So he let us like take chance apiece. And then it was the January of '84. And me and John Ronnie from Queens, who built machines, he built Supremes and reworked them. And he used to take the chrome off of them, and he used to do a blackening process with bone meal and whatnot, and get them to have this nice, cool look. And we drove down, and from Jacksonville one night, we said, we're going to go down to see Paul. And we got in the car, and it took us like 12 hours to get down to Jacksonville, and we stayed there, and we wind up going in his workshop. And then we wind up that night, he took out a whole bunch of machines on the living room floor and photos from Jerry, Sailor Jerry, and showed us all sorts of stuff that I never seen before. And I got to sleep in the room where he had his little tattoo desk. So that was the coolest experience we ever had. And it was one of the coldest winters that January in '84. Me and John was sleeping on Zeke's boat that was parked in a marina where it was, you froze your ass off. But we slept there because we didn't have any place else to go, and we didn't have any money for a motel. So that was it. But the whole trip was worth it, especially being with Paul and whatnot. He was a man of men, that he didn't bullshit, you know, and he knew who was right and he knew who was wrong, and he was on the money. I mean, the man was like the godfather of tattooing. I mean, Coleman was the grand finale of where Paul started, getting better and working for him and whatnot. But I mean, after Coleman was out of the picture, Paul was like building machines for artists worldwide at one point, and all his stuff was, stuff that worked. I mean, Paul put his heart into what he did, and he did it all by hand. And it was one of my highlights, of meeting someone of him. And Spaulding also he was an all right guy, you know what I'm saying? A lot of different guys were good, and then there was a lot of hucksters too, I mean, that were just in it for the buck, that other guys, turned on to other guys, and they just like raped the business for as much as they could, and that was all part of the game. That's all about it. Yeah, that's about it. I want to do what I feel I can do my best at, and that's the name of the game. So I'm stuck on doing traditional tattooing, and that's what I'll keep on doing as long as I can do it. I mean, a couple of times if they bring me something that's already drawn and I think it's going to make a good tattoo or it's going to work and I want to do it, that's a different story. I'll do it. I'm not saying that I won't. But they got to do their homework and bring me the outline of what they want. And then I'll do it. And that's the end of that. So, that's it.